Then moving on to Man United, they've agreed to pay £62.5 million for Mateus Cunha over 2 years now. There was a bit of they had to agree that. I think they initially wanted it over 5 years or something like that. How are these deals usually structured? Is that usually the case? It's over 2 years, or would a 5 year term be the norm?
Well, there's no one size fits all, so it's all obviously a negotiation. But clearly, if you're putting a deal over 5 years, you're effectively the selling club is effectively financing the buying club. So they would ordinarily expect to be compensated with a higher fee for the fact that they're not getting their money up front. Now, what tends to happen in any event is that the smaller clubs will finance the receivable. So they will know, for example, that they're getting these payments over the next 2 years. They can go to a bank and say this money is near enough guaranteed because of the way the football system works, particularly in the Premier League, particularly with a buyer like Manchester United. That money is more or less guaranteed. It's just a case of it not actually having come in. So the borrowing is quite cheap in terms of what you received. And we saw an example, if people want to have a look at what that looks like in a case study. In the back of the West Ham accounts for last year, you see that Rice, there was a £30 million instalment on Rice that was due to be paid on the 31st of July 2024. They financed it with Barclays, and they received up front at the end of September 2023, so 10 months before it was due. Barclays gave them £28.2 million, and then that £30 million, when it came in July from Arsenal, went straight to Barclays. So Barclays made £1.8 million for a 10-month lending. West Ham sacrificed £1.8 million, so around about, I think it's about 6% if you do the maths on it. West Ham are happy, they've got their cash up front in September of 2023. Barclays are happy, they've got their £1.8 million profit for very little risk. Arsenal don't care. It's irrelevant to Arsenal. Arsenal are basically making that payment come what may. And so, but you can see that clearly in the West Ham situation, if they'd negotiated with Arsenal for Arsenal to have paid that 30 million in the September of 2023, they wouldn't have needed to pay 1.8 million pounds to the bank. Mm-hmm. So effectively what's happening, if you ask a club to take the money over a number of years, you're effectively financing the other club, because that other club has got 30 million pounds extra in it, either in its bank account or that it doesn't need to borrow from somebody else before the due date. So that's kind of the way you look at it, and so it's therefore no surprise when Manchester United go to Wolves and say, "Can we pay you over 5 years?" Well, Wolves say, "No thanks." But if you want to do it, it'll cost you, let's say, another £10 million on top of the fee, because that's our cost of financing, cost of capital. So you can always make it. Anybody can always agree at very long, stretched out payment terms. Manchester City did one with Barcelona, and you can see the breakdown of this in the accounts, in Barcelona's accounts, in a lot of detail over the last 5 years in relation to Ferran Torres. But I think the reality is that City ended up getting, I don't know, let's say, best part €10 million over his market value, because they agreed to do it over quite a long time, over a 5-year period. Mm. So it can happen, but it's all just built into the cost of the deal. But the Wolves one was a bad example for United, because the whole reason they were getting him for £62.5 million was because of the release clause, and the release clause was dependent upon certain payment terms. So there's no incentive for Wolves at all to agree anything different from that. And sure enough, the conversation was quite short by the looks of things, and was leaked out very quickly to the press. So, but that's how the thinking works, and those that are interested can see in the financial statements of these clubs, and also in the filings. So you see at Companies House, you see these documents filed, which are effectively the financing of transfer fees from banks like Macquarie, Barclays, Investec used to have a big business in this area, and a number of other players. But that's what's happening. They're accelerating the receivable for the football club, and the football club is paying essentially a fee to have that money up front from the bank before it arrives from the buying club.
Would we expect that transaction to be, well, make Wolves essentially fine for PSR this year? They did move their accounting deadline, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all lines up, doesn't it? You know, I think I doubt they were very far short on PSR, but I suspect they were a little bit short because otherwise you probably wouldn't move it, and you'd just keep the profit from Kuna in next year in 25-26. And now what they're doing, because they've moved it to 30th of June, subject. I mean, I think it looks very clear that the deal is going to happen in their 24-25 accounting year, and so it's hard to think that that's not about PSR.
And
You know,
Ruben
when you
Moore,
move,
sorry, go.
moving that date, I think is a strong indicator. To be honest, I
Of
mean,
course.
you know, look, we'll know. We'll sort of know because we'll be able to model it out. But either way, I think either way, the key point is that they have no issue with PSR now.
Yeah. There's quite a few. There's been quite a lot of reports around Alejandro Garnacho for several months. Ruben Amorim's reportedly informed him that he can leave the club this summer. How much would his potential exit be worth given his homegrown status?
Yeah, well, you'd think that there's a good chance that they can get 40-50 million pounds, which of course would be near pure profit, not completely, but near. And the attractive thing probably about Garnacho as a proposition in the market is his age, and the fact that he's probably not on the sort of wages that United have got to deal with Sancho and with Rashford and with Casemiro, which makes it a lot easier to sell the player and get some value. The big issue United have already got, and it's very clear that they've got this issue with Sancho, is Chelsea trying to renegotiate Sancho's wages, or if they can't, they're going to send him back to United and pay the break fee. So they won't have that issue with Garnacho. I guess the issue with Garnacho is where does he go? But you only need one club to buy him, and there are a couple of people that seem to be interested. And then, of course, the worst case scenario is you loan him out. I think at the sort of wage that Garnacho's on and the sort of age that he is, you could probably see somebody being happy to pay both a loan fee and all of his wages, which is not the same as a Rashford, where you probably, unless you can get him loaned out to maybe Barcelona, you're not going to get a big loan fee and have somebody paying all of the wages. So there's just the contrast of the situation, and obviously 40-50 million pounds is going to make a big difference to United's ability to compete in the market this summer.